Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the WTF1 practice wrap-up powered by MoneyGram. I am your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison. Glad you could join us straight after practice on this delightful Friday afternoon. With me as ever, I've got my wonderful co-host, Miss Charlie Williams. Hello, Charlie. How's it going?
I'm good. I feel a bit under the weather, but I'm excited that F1 is back, so that's the main thing.
We're back after all the speculation, after all the talk, after a team principal silly season, arguments about 11th teams, trying to fine-tune testing with a comb. We actually have some meaningful running. Kind of, sort of. But we'll talk a little bit about through testing over the next half an hour or so with you, fine audience. Hope you guys are enjoying the show. And send in your opinions, as always, in the chat. We've got our admins talking as well, so have fun with that over the next half an hour or so. What we're going to do is we're going to discuss all of the practice times, some of the winners and losers, and some of the bigger stories that have come in entering the weekend as we go up and down through the grid. Now, let's have a bit of fun first. We'll talk about this in reverse championship order. And first up on the board is Williams. Williams are up first. And, well, it's about what you'd expect, really, I think, Charlie. I mean, Williams were 20th and 17th in FP2. Albon 17th, the higher of the two. Logan Sargent, bottom of the field. But it's last, but it's a competitive last. And I think that in itself is probably a good thing for Williams, right?
Yeah, do you know, I thought they looked really good at testing, and I kind of not got my hopes up because it is Williams, but I thought they looked quite reliable, but they've been kind of like you say, at the bottom for both practice sessions now, and they're just kind of there existing, aren't they? Like, they're just kind of there and thereabouts. I think they might be a little bit closer to the midfield, but it's not looking like a strong turnaround. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I didn't really expect that anyway.
No, I mean, this is still a team that it's still in a bit of a mess, managerial speaking. James Vowles has just come in. They had to basically reveal that their head of aero is gone as well. The management's a little bit all over the place. I did hear Alex Albon say in the media yesterday that their aim is basically be a more competitive last. Basically,
yeah.
You know, they're not expecting to make any real inroads on the rest of the grid, but as long as they're in the mix at the bottom, I think they'll take that. And if you're going by the times, then yeah, they're the bread in an Alpha Tauri sandwich, which we'll get to very shortly. So that's not too bad for Williams, all things considered. They are in the mix, and I think that's about the most they could realistically ask for at the moment. Not too much to take away from it. Not entirely a big surprise that Logan Sargent was stone dead last, but only by a tenth and a half. So it's not dreadful. I mean, for a first ever time in the car in terms of an official session, I don't think there's too much to be concerned about in terms of raw pace at the moment. Let's get into Alpha Tauri. And I had to go for the blurry, cool, sparky picture on this one because I thought it looked pretty. It's got nothing to do with how fast they are, honest. Alpha Tauri are next up, and well, they were down the bottom and a bit lower than I thought they were going to be. They were 18th and 19th. Times-wise, I mean, we're going by FP2 because it's a bit more representative, given it's going to be similar conditions to the race on Sunday. 18th and 19th. Tsunoda ahead of the Freeze by about, or just under a tenth, by the look of it, Charlie. But it looks like, so far, they're roughly where they were towards the end of last season, that ninth-ish down the bottom of the board.
Yeah, I don't really see them changing much, to be honest. They haven't shown me anything that, you know, would convince me that that's going to be otherwise. They're a kind of another meh kind of team, I think.
Feels that
although
way.
in FP1, it did surprise me that Tsunoda and De Vries, they were actually quite different, like in times. I can't remember exactly where they were, but I was just kind of thinking, because I didn't expect that. My initial reaction is that De Vries is probably going to floor Tsunoda, and
really?
that might be quite controversial. I don't know, but so yeah, I don't know. There's 100 reasons why that could have been. It could have been that they were just running different setups at the time, because, like you say, at FP2, they were right next to each other.
Indeed, and they were right next to each other on this one as well. They look pretty evenly matched so far, from what I've seen. Nick looks okay. He went off a little bit towards the end of FP2, but Turn 10's been causing a lot of people problems so far this weekend. It's a very tricky corner. If you've ever played the video games, you'll know that trail braking into that left-hander at Turn 10 is really, really hard. So it's difficult, but good news, Charlie, at least they're not being sold. Not yet, anyway, because that was also in the news that they had to shut down the rumor that they might have been sold. I think it was the German media that led the charge on that one, that they may have to either move out of Italy or sell, and it looks like they're not doing that now. So I guess that's good.
I mean, what happened the last time that we had this is just speculation kind of rumor, shut it down? We said goodbye to Matteo Binotto. That's what happened. So I mean, I don't know how much I really believe the no, it's not true kind of response, but we'll see.
Yeah, look, it would be a mess to move a team out of the European Union if the rumors were true they were going to move them to the UK. I don't think that's a good idea. I mean, maybe Michael Andretti sent some furious emails in the last week since then, knowing that there might be a possibility, or at least just floating it out there, that AlphaTauri might get sold off. But at least they're not being sold for now, we think. I mean, it seems like a bit like one of those board of confidence sort of statements you hear in football. It's like, oh yeah, AlphaTauri's got the full backing of the board. We love that. But we'll have to wait and see in the coming weeks and months. Let's get into Haas. And, Haas were a bit up and down. I mean, this might be the biggest surprise maybe in all of free practice so far. No, not the guys in green. We'll get to them in a minute. But Nico Hülkenberg, 5th fastest in practice, a 1:31.3. Only 9 thousandths behind Charles Leclerc in the full-blooded 2023 Ferrari. But that's a shocker, eh, Charlie?
Yeah, I'm actually quite proud of this, because I don't know if you remember back to our testing, after testing on day 3, I said that I thought that Haas were going to do really well this year. So I'm kind of glad that they pulled that out at the last moment of FP2, because at first, because considering they were put under this bracket of like fighting for 4th by other teams, I was kind of like, they look like they've got something, but I'm not quite sure what it is. I wonder if Hülkenberg going 5th kind of alludes that they have been sandbagging a little bit.
It's possible. I mean, Haas in general, we mentioned this during the testing stream as well, they have this knack of starting the year with a really strong car, but then they can't develop over a season. And this might be another case of that formula, bearing fruit again, where Haas starts strong. I mean, Magnussen last year was in the top 6 at this very Grand Prix a year ago, and looks like Hülkenberg could be on pace to replicate that with the way it's going. Bit of a mixed bag of a session in general, especially in FP2. Kevin Magnussen was down in 16th, but there seemingly was reasons for that. It was said during the Sky broadcast that with Kravitz snooping around, he said that Magnussen didn't like the setup. They've been working on some tweaks towards the end. He did the least number of laps compared to anybody else in the session, only 18. Most of the field were in the mid to high 20s. So Magnussen lost some time, certainly. But again, maybe not truly representative. I mean, with Haas 5th and 16th, who knows where they really are. But Charlie, I've got to push you for a prediction for my friends at MoneyGram. Which Haas driver do you think will qualify higher? Are you going to stick with Hülkenberg given the practice times here, or are you going to say K-Mag will come out on top?
I think I'm going to go Hülkenberg.
So you're going to stick with Hülkenberg?
I think so. I don't really, going into this season, I kind of thought how equal they will be. And so to pick the one over the other is actually quite difficult.
It could be. I mean, like I said, the session times are so erratic, it's hard to say. I think Kevin Magnussen will get it together in actual qualifying when it matters most. I think K-Mag, being the more experienced guy, knows the setup. I think Magnussen, in the end, in qualifying, will come out on top. Although, small hot take, I think both Haas's will make Q3. Both of them, not just one. I think Haas look a bit stronger than I think we've given them credit for. They were up there in testing a little bit, but I didn't quite buy it. Now it looks like they've actually got something.
I have given them credit in abundance.
I didn't. I make no bones about it. I did not, and they have surprised me. Hulkenbach may very well be a thing, by all we know. And hey, like those guys who have been caping for him to get that first podium, they might actually be onto something here, which would be crazy in its own right. Now, we got to talk next about probably the story of the weekend so far, and that's been Aston Martin. Dominated the headlines all weekend long. I mean, this, on and off the track, we've had Lance Stroll fly in. Stroll is healthy-ish. That's a story in of itself. He is going to take part this weekend as it stands. It turns out he's got metal screws in his left wrist.
Yeah.
He actually, I don't know if you saw the end of FP2, but they were actually, Anthony Davidson was breaking down. He's really struggling with like turns 1 and 2 because of how hard he has to use the steering wheel. So he's clearly not at 100%. And I don't know how he's going to handle the full race distance. But like, should he be back? Charlie, do you think they might have rushed this one a little bit?
I don't think that we're being told the full extent to his injuries because I mean, I covered it yesterday on the WTF1 site, but both arms, like both wrists, were actually wrapped up at one point, and he was like, "Oh, one's broke, but the other one's just banged up a little bit," and I was like, are they? Because, like you said, in that, I mean, it's his right wrist that's actually broken, right?
Right.
But in your what you just said about the end of FP2 breaking down it was actually his left that he was taking off the wheel to like get back round. So, yeah. I mean, if that one's in so much pain, I don't know. I don't think he should have come back. No, I know it's not very nice to miss a race, and he was probably sat at home watching testing, thinking, "Oh, my car is quick, and I'm not in it." But you just can't rush these things. I mean, I've broken my wrist. I've got a metal plate in my wrist, actually.
Really?
I do, and even now, like, I mean, it definitely was not a bicycle injury. I don't think I could probably say how I broke it on here.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, I still struggle to do things now with my wrists, so.
Yeah, and let's be honest, you're not driving a 210 miles an hour Formula One car that's pulling 5G in certain aspects. I mean, look, they're professional athletes. They're always going to try and rush back from injury. For those who don't know my background particularly well, I'm a huge MotoGP fan, and if you know your two-wheeled racing, bike riders are silly people, and they will always try to get back from stupid-sounding injuries like broken legs, broken wrists, fractured collarbones, you name it. You probably have already seen Marc Marquez, and you may have heard about him and his documentary that came out basically like a month ago, and talking about how hard he's had to work to get his arm back in place again. Bike riders are crazy people, and I think Formula One drivers are pretty much cut from the same cloth in that sense. You don't want to miss any time. You don't want to give up any sort of advantage to your teammate. And, you know, they had Felipe Drugovich and Stoffel Vandoorne in the garage ready to go just in case. But it looks like Stroll's going to continue. Good luck to him on race day. He's got 57 laps to do on Sunday, pretty much non-stop. If this keeps going. So, good luck to him. It's not like he was slow or anything, though, because he was 6th in FP2, only half a second off the top, but it's kind of been overshadowed because the only man in the 130s and the fastest man in FP2, and I'm checking my notes here, Fernando Alonso? What's just happened? Is this explainable? Like, are Aston Martin just like, have they taken the sandbags off early? Charlie, what is going on here? Because it looks like Aston Martin might have something here.
I mean, they kind of become the midfield team to watch after testing, right? And I don't think that's changed. What I love most about this is yesterday during the press conferences, Alonso seemed fairly coy about his chances of getting a race win this season or even like a podium at all.
Played it down.
And I think he's out there playing some good Alonso mind games right now because I think he knows that his car is on point.
Yeah, like as the Americans might say, you might say Alonso was playing possum out there with the amount of pace that Aston Martin actually has. I know a lot of people, like, and I can see in the chat right with you, the Alonso fans are very, very excited about this because it looks like he might have joined a team that was even better than we all thought it was going to be. They did look great in testing. We hailed them the biggest winners of winter testing.
Yeah.
And, you know, it looked like they could be challenging for fourth. And then when we got to yesterday's media sessions, Carlos Sainz, George Russell, Charles Leclerc were all saying Aston Martin looked like they're in the mix for a podium. And, you know, drivers say certain things and, you know, you always take it with a pinch of salt, but I don't think they were bluffing. This Aston Martin is quick. It's passing every test so far. I mean, we'll have to really wait and see tomorrow afternoon, and we'll have to wait and see if this is genuine and how much the teams have let go. But Fernando Alonso, that's only 4 tenths slower than last year's pole time. Pole last year was a 1:30.5, and that was a 1:30.9 from Alonso at the end of the session. So, Charlie, my God, things look promising here.
Yeah, I think the most telling thing for me is that other teams are so quick to praise them. And, you know, they're never going to reveal what their true pace is, or, you know, how they think the car is going to perform. It's always going to be the other teams that are like, no, we need to watch out for Aston Martin. And that's exactly what's happened. So for me, that's the most telling thing.
As a Sebastian Vettel fan, you do not know how upset I am that the man retired a year before seemingly Dan Fallows might have cracked the code on Pandora's box here, because it looks like Aston Martin might be challenging for a podium this weekend, which is probably like beyond anyone's realistic expectation, which is absolutely wild to me in the first place. Let's get into Alfa Romeo. Pretty quiet so far this weekend. I mean, probably quieter than what they were in testing, where they had multiple car failures and they vanity ran Zhou Guanyu to top of day's testing. I think it was day 2. They were 10th and 12th this time round in FP2, Charlie, and pretty much right where they were towards the end of last season.
Yeah, I think they're just kind of plodding along, aren't they, really, in the same positions that they were already. The thing about this year is that I feel like the midfield is very broad. And it's kind of like it has tightened a lot, whereas we kind of used to have like the 3 top teams, and then you'd have the midfield, and then you'd have like the 2 or 1 team at the end that just couldn't keep up with the midfield. But now it's like, here's the top 3, possibly top 4 as well, and then you've just got like everybody else, and I think that's what's going to make it exciting this year. So Alfa Romeo are steadily in that middle of the midfield somewhere, but there's just like, you know, there's like tenths in between like all of these teams, and I just don't think we can actually put where they are. I mean, I always forget as well that they actually finished 6th in the constructors last year.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, that deserves a lot more praise than they're given, I think.
Exactly. I mean, there was a game plan with this team last year. I believe they were the only team last year that came in on the minimum weight limit. I think their game plan clearly was get out there with a light car, cash out on points quickly with Valtteri. He did just that, and then hold on in the second half of the year as development hurt them. I mean, they were one of the worst teams in Formula 1 in the second half of the year, and they held on to 6th place, which is still way better than where they finished last year when they were 9th. So again, it's not bad with Alfa Romeo to have them 10th and 12th right now. I think they would take that right now to be contending for the points, given their end of 2022 form was them down the bottom of the board. So, and Joe, again, competitive. That's a good sign as well for him, because I know a lot of people have been rumbling about his future as well. Now, Charlie, let's talk about your beloved McLaren. Bit of a mixed bag. Oscar Piastri down in 15th, but Lando Norris 9th. And I don't know if you heard them talk to Zach Brown on the Sky broadcast. I think he's on the pit wall cam this week. I'm just glad it's not Christian Horner, personally. So I'll take Zach Brown. He actually seemed a bit more optimistic this time round. So, yeah, I mean, how do you feel about it now? We've had a day's running officially, Charlie.
I mean, I know like FP1 is in no way, you can't look at that very representative of the conditions that we're going to get for the race. But they looked a lot better then. I mean, Lando finished in 4th, Oscar was 12th. And I feel like Lando just proves every time that he goes out into that car that he is a world-class talent. I really do think he's like a future world champion. But that aside, he's just so adaptable, and he manages to pull the best out of the car, no matter how awful it is. So that is like my only hope that I'm kind of like hanging on to for this season. That I just know that Lando can bring out the best in anything that he does. He's so adaptable, and I do think that Oscar. I mean, I don't think they're going to be anywhere near each other, contrary to what other people believe. I don't think they are. But I do think Oscar could bring home some points. Like, I think he has that adaptability in him as well.
We'll have to wait and see. I think the jury's still out on Oscar a little bit personally, but you don't need to convince me that Lando Norris is a world-class racing driver, because I think that's exactly what he is. People were way down on... I saw power rankings after testing that had McLaren as low down as 9th post-testing. They were down bad on this team. Real bad. And Lando Norris is basically, I mean, 9th is pretty much par for where McLaren were towards the end of last season anyway. So it looks, I don't think it looks pretty out there for what it's worth, depending on how you feel about the livery, I suppose. But Lando is still getting it done, and he's in that mix again. There's like a couple attempts covering Charles down to Lando in the bottom end of the top 10. He's in that conversation. So given how down McLaren were on them, like by themselves, like they themselves were down bad on their development targets. They've been very honest, saying they're relying on Baku. I know Lando himself said that we're going to need more than Baku to fix the problems we've got. So they're all down talking about how this team is and how their car is, but Lando's still competitive. So, you know, I guess maybe his talent is compensating for a lot more than we think it is, but he's doing an excellent job. I mean, if 9th is representative, that's a good sign for them, wouldn't you say, Charlie?
Yeah, definitely. If they can just consistently bring home points, even if it's just like at the bottom of the barrel, then I'd be fairly happy, considering how testing went. And I don't know whether I'm just really pessimistic, but as soon as somebody tells me that something's going to be awful, I'm like, all right, okay. Like, it must be awful if you're going to tell me that it is. But yeah, if they can just get through with a few points, I'll be a happy McLaren fan.
Sure. Alpine, and these guys are still a bit of an enigma to me. Pierre Gasly was 7th in the mix. That's pretty good going for Alpine. Ocon 11th, but only about a 10th and a half behind. Like, we saw in the technical report that pretty much everything on the Alpine is new in terms of bodywork and parts compared to the test. So the rumors were true. This is basically a brand new car. And testing, you just chuck that out. Just chuck it out with the bathwater. We don't know what's going on with that now. But I mean, I don't think they've played their hand yet, Charlie. But they're still, again, in the mix, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, there seemed to be quite a buzz around them after testing, but it was kind of like a not a good buzz, but not a bad buzz either. It was kind of like, we think that they've got more, but they're just not showing it yet. And it definitely wasn't reflected on track. Like, I don't think they had an overly positive testing. And in terms of FP1 and FP2, still, again, I expected them to be higher up, really, by now. And like you say, they've got like the most developed car from last year, I'd say, that's on that grid. And with further developments due throughout the season as well that are planned, I wouldn't write them off completely. But at the moment, I don't see anything that's kind of like, that at least puts them fighting with, you know, Aston Martin for 4th.
Right. Like, look, we say this now, Alpine aren't slow. They'll probably just end up with both their cars in the top 8, and then we're just like, business as usual. No big deal. You know, they'll figure it out later. But yeah, Alpine's still very quiet relative to a lot of teams, especially given they were 4th in the championship last year. So one to certainly keep an eye on. Now
they've got such an exciting driver lineup as well. So I'd love for the car to be like, you know, full beans, because both of them going at it for as fast as they can do. I think there's going to be some fireworks.
I think so too. I think it'll certainly be one to keep an eye on. I don't think much of their personal feud, but I think in terms of ability, I think it could be quite interesting. Let's get into Mercedes. And, well, the big story for Mercedes was probably more what happened off the track than on the track. Lewis Hamilton having to go through what we call Jewelry Gate 3, Electric Boogaloo. And, well, having to get a medical exemption again from the FIA before he could compete. It was granted, so hopefully situation resolved. I didn't even know until looking at the pictures for to create this live stream that he's actually gotten a second piercing on the other side of his nose, and now they match, I guess, if you're into that sort of thing. But is this another much ado about nothing story, Charlie?
I don't know if I'll be the world's most popular person after this, but I probably wasn't anyway, so it's fine. But just let him wear a nose ring. Like, I fully understand that an excessive amount of jewelry is for safety reasons, of course. I get that. But the regulation states that you're allowed to wear like wedding rings. So what's the difference? If you want to wear a ring that, like, I don't know, your great grandma left you or something, would you not be allowed to wear that just because it's not a wedding ring, but it's still a ring?
Yeah.
So the rules are just a bit vague, and things like nose piercings and tattoos and, you know, the way you colour your hair, they're all parts of you. It's a way of expressing yourself. So why try and take that away from them?
Look, I get it to a degree. The FIA is a governing body. You know, they've got to be seen as if they're at least pushing the safety argument, because I mean, if something happens to a driver in a car injury wise, and something like a stud or a ring exacerbates the injury, the driver's not going to get it in the neck. We like those people too much generally. We root for those people. The FIA is getting it in the neck. So
absolutely.
To a degree, I get why they've got to cover themselves to an extent. There's one easy solution to this. Just have Hamilton sign a waiver. Just say, I am wearing this car on my... I'm driving this car and wearing this piece of jewelry on my provision. I deem the FIA take no accountability for anything that happens to me in this car as I drive it. Problem solved. Problem solved. The FIA absolves itself of responsibility. Hamilton doesn't have to get infections every time he takes his nose studs out. Everybody's a winner. Like you know, at least the FIA could say. At least the FIA could turn around and say, "Hey, not our problem." So that would be pretty neat. They were a bit up and down over the day on the testing. Hamilton 8th in FP2, George Russell 13th. Merckx a little bit down compared to where I thought they were going to be. I think they're still working on some things, but not the most reassuring results there, Charlie.
I refuse to believe that this is Mercedes' actual pace in either session. I think they are sandbagging, and if I'm wrong and tomorrow they end up going out in Q1, then so be it, but I honestly really doubt it. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
I just never believe anything that Mercedes sell me until the day of qualifying, like ever.
Top two rows still, I think, easy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Ferrari, not an awful lot to report out of the Ferrari camp, really. I think they were largely pretty quiet outside of Sainz having a big spin in FP1 and ruining a set of tyres, and that wasn't fun. Sainz botched his main quali run. He was down in 14th. Charles Leclerc 4th. And best of the non-Alonso and Red Bull club, as I like to call it. I don't think there's too much to read from Sainz having a down qualifying run in 14th. I think 4th is probably a lot more representative, Charlie.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to worry about. I'm still taking these kind of free practice sessions as sort of like extra testing sessions. I mean, we've had FlowViz and Aero Rakes out today. So I don't know. I think we're still looking at a Red Bull Ferrari lead this season. Agreed.
I think that's pretty much bog standard and straightforward. I think Ferrari is still good. I still think they'll get both their cars in the top 6 pretty comfortably. I've not seen anything to really doubt that so far. It's the long run pace that worries me about Ferrari, not over a lap, but we'll have to wait and see again on Sunday for how that goes. Finally, Red Bull, and well, so far, so good. Right, I think Perez was fastest in FP1 and then second and third in FP2. Only a couple of thousandths between them. A 10th off Alonso's time at the top of the board. Maybe a little bit of trouble in paradise, Charlie. I know that Crofty spoke to the team after FP1 and I think one of the members of the team told them that, quote, "We felt better after testing." So maybe the conditions are something that caught Red Bull out a little bit?
I don't know. I don't think so. I'm going to say now. I'm going to say congratulations, Red Bull, on winning the 2023 title. I think.
The first practice session, we're laying this out. The very first one. Bold. I love it.
I just think they found a package that just works. They've developed that to make it even better this year. I think the only thing that could stop them is inter-team politics. It could get a little bit messy if both of them are pulling these kind of results from the car. That's the only thing I think that's going to stop them.
Well, if it keeps Sergio Perez from moaning about this situation, I guess that's probably a good thing for team chemistry all round. And he's looked good so far on Friday's run-in. So maybe they're a bit closer together than what they were towards the end of last year when Max was, let's be honest, smacking Perez around a little bit. I think they'll be fine. I think Red Bull still are pretty comfortable out there. I think they'll put the hammer down when they need to on Saturday. I've not seen anything to really suggest that they won't, be on pole, maybe even a 1-2. I mean, I'm getting this out of the way now, Charlie. Do you think this is going to be a pole position for Max Verstappen? Who do you have top three? Give me a top three.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna go Max for pole, and then I'm gonna go Charles and Alonso.
Alonso top three.
I'm gonna throw it in there. I feel like I need to. Do you know what? I've never been Alonso's biggest fan. As a McLaren fan, you could probably understand why. But I'm rooting for him a little bit. I am actually quite excited.
Well, it's nice to get a fresh contender up there. I can completely understand the excitement. And look, Fernando's been around 20 years now. Like, a lot of people have been waiting for him over a decade for him to be a true title contender again. Maybe this is the first sign that they could have something here. So I get the excitement. Top three for me, I think Max will end up on pole in the end. I think Charles Leclerc will get on the front row alongside him. The Ferraris always had good one-lap pace, and Charles, I think, is an excellent qualifier, one of the best in the sport. So I'm going to say Charles to share the front row with him, and I'm going to say Perez third, but I think Alonso might very well be fourth. I think that the fourth spot could be very interesting here. I think Alonso could get on the second row, which would be huge for Aston Martin. They would love that.
Yeah.
Anything else? But yeah, Charlie, first proper day in for the F1 season. How you feeling?
Excited. I am very excited for this season to start.
Like, it's a bit more interesting now. We've actually got some cars running compared to what I thought it was going to be going in, and that is only a good thing. We'll be back for the qualifying wrap-up straight after qualifying tomorrow afternoon right here on the WTF1 wrap, brought to you and powered by our friends at MoneyGram. I've been Dre Harrison. She's been Charlie Williams. And until tomorrow, sayonara.
Bye.